Well, Brendan, as you know, I kind of have a history of fighting people within my party when I think that it's not the right decision. Government ought not to be able to force you to shut down your business, not go to work, not go to church. I think it should be Republicans voting in Republican primaries. The Democrats continue to work to try to make illegal legal. And someone who is illegally in the country, then they're taking that opportunity away from a child that is legally here. But it will be the podcasters and the streamers and people that are the new media, which is where most people are getting their news.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brandon Lewis, the Tennessee Conservative News. Joined today is Senator Marsha Blackburn to talk about her gubernatorial run in the volunteer state. Senator Blackburn, thank you for being here.
I am delighted to join you. Thanks for having me on.
So the audience today is primarily GOP, almost exclusively just GOP primary voters all over the state, your club presidents, your educational wonks, folks that keep up with the legislature. And we're going to talk about a little bit about illegal immigration, homeschooling, COVID, GOP primaries, and the freedom of the press. And the first question is, because we got a lot to run through, currently Tennessee taxpayers are paying about $800 million a year educating illegal aliens. My own niece, Miss Blackburn, my sister-in-law discovered she wasn't learning anything in school, and after 3 months had a parent-teacher conference, and the lady just said, listen, we've got 25 kids in here that speak English as a second language. I'm sorry, but it's the best I can do. And so she started homeschooling her kids. We did a poll here in Hamilton County, 80+% of GOP primary voters. It would be 85% in the state on average, I believe. Don't think we should be doing it. But when Bo Watson and William Lambert's bill was passed for the local LEAs, I mean, Jeremy Faison, who's, the House Republican caucus leader, like violently opposed it, as do a lot of other members in the House, even our own local school board. All the Democrats voted in a resolution that half the Republicans voted with, and the other half of the Republicans didn't vote. It seems like there's this disconnect between my school board, Ben Darty, and Jeremy Faison, and like the GOP electorate. So, what are your thoughts on what this is doing to our system? Would you support this kind of legislation? And can you fight people in your own party to get it across the finish line?
Well, Brendan, as you know, I kind of have a history of fighting people within my party when I think that it's not the right decision. That's what happened when I led the fight against the state income tax. And of course, you have Bo's legislation. That is something that I am supportive of. And this is an issue that the state, as you're saying, and rightfully so, people want to see this addressed. There's a couple of things we know. Number one, the Democrats continue to work to try to make illegal legal. And that is something when you're talking about educating our children and when you're talking about colleges with children and someone who is illegally in the country, then they're taking that opportunity away from a child that is legally here and going through the system. I think we have to look very, very carefully to make certain that I say it's the big five: faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. And preserving those opportunities for our kids should be at the top of our list. Now, one of the things I really do appreciate is the work the legislature has done on school choice, because this gives parents more say and the opportunities and options that are going to be there for their children, whether it's public school, private school, homeschool. We want parents to have more, not fewer choices. And I don't think any parent should have to win the lottery in order to have a say in their child's education. Another thing that we are that we need to be aware of as we talk about this and supporting what Senator Watson and Rep. Lamberth are seeking to do is I've at the federal level worked on legislation that would remove the ability of the NEA to lobby government entities, to lobby the federal government, to try to go in and lobby for policies that, and we saw this, whether it was COVID or it's the issue that we're talking about that would restrict opportunities for our children. You don't want to give the union, um, you don't want to cede any ground to them. So,
Well, that's true. I mean, you look most of the things, and whether it's in education or automotive or anywhere else, once they get there, it may be okay at the beginning, but just like letting poison ivy grow up a tree, it looks real pretty until it kills the tree. Uh, the homeschoolers. I lived in Chattanooga,
yeah.
and our kids were zoned when we started getting into school in a school that was overran with illegal aliens. There were shootings in the parking lot, gang activity, teen pregnancy, drugs. I was not going to put my two girls there. So I'd spent 20 years paying in taxes. I mean, I just couldn't send them where I was zoned, like not with a good conscience. And so, homeschoolers outperform in many cases schoolers from almost any other situation. Every week we report in Tennessee public schools about kids that are raped, molested, taken advantage of inside the school system by the very people that it employs. Yet, when we tried to pass a very simple bill in Tennessee that would allow homeschoolers to have the autonomy to educate their kids without government interference, it died at the hands of Republicans. It had passed in 14 other states. And we had a couple of activist judges like Rob Filial that sent in a letter saying, hey, you need to turn this down because these homeschoolers might beat their kids, and how would we know? And so when it comes to homeschooling, Donald Trump, has proposed a 10K tax income deduction for homeschoolers because we're paying into the taxes. 50% of our money goes to something we don't feel comfortable using. What would you say to homeschoolers on two fronts? One is our independence to homeschool, and would you ever support legislation that just allowed parents to be independent? And number two, is there anything financially, even like a no strings attached tax rebate or refund or credit or something, so that those that are paying into the system but opt not to use it, we're still saving, $12,000 a year on average for the school system, federal, state, and local when we pull our kids out, but we can't take advantage of it. What ideas would you have for homeschoolers?
Yes. And one of the things I think that is very helpful to this entire discussion, and you're so right about President Trump and how he has approached education and turning that responsibility back to the states. And the U.S. Department of Education is going away. It is happening very quickly. And what we're going to see is that responsibility, the authority, the funding comes back to the states. I was talking to a principal this weekend, and he said he is so looking forward to being able to say, I don't have all these federal mandates on me, and I have the ability to handle what I think is going to be best for the children here that we are seeking to educate. And it's the same thing with homeschoolers. And you're very right. As the U.S. Department of Education goes away, and then your General Assembly here in Tennessee, and also your state school board, and they're going to be looking at how they have more choice, more options, and are able to give parents more rights in how their child is educated. The tax credit that you're talking about, that is something that is a great idea because parents are paying in, but they are not pulling that on the system. There again, this is something that gives parents more options for how they would choose to educate their child. That's always a good thing. And as We see the U.S. Department of Education going away. Brandon, for me, one of the exciting things is parents are going to be able, and teachers are going to be able to be more innovative in how we teach children. We want children to learn how to be lifelong learners. And opening these doors of opportunity is a great way that we're going to be able to do that.
I guess I'd just ask specific to the homeschool legislation that was introduced on parental autonomy to homeschool without government interference in Tennessee, which is really like the crux of the question. To me, if you put somebody in charge of a series of restaurants as a regional manager and only 66% of them perform at grade level, like you don't put that person in charge of anything else. And
Mhm.
the way that they're looking at it now is that homeschool has to be under this purview of the same institution that we're saying simultaneously is so bad we've got to get people out of it with school choice. Like it seems weird to put the failed manager in charge of the good stores that are left. So, like as far as autonomy goes, and is there any tax relief that homeschoolers could see at the state level?
With autonomy, parents want to have and should have that autonomy. As I said, more choice, more options, more freedom for parents. You know, one of the things that I've said as we've talked about the governor's race, we're a great state, we're well led. Let's make certain we are number one in individual freedom. And this is one of those areas that people want to see the freedom and the options to handle the education of their children. Tax relief, of course, having the ability to have tax relief for parents, that is always a good thing. Having them, you know, when you look at things like tax credits um, and for childcare, tax credits for children, then of course having one that deals with education and not only K through 12 but college as parents are working to complete this education in the manner that they see fit that is best for their child. One thing we've learned, one size fits all education does not work. I have two children and four grandchildren, and I I approach teaching with each of them differently. My two children learned in very different ways, and it was important to construct that learning environment for them to help them learn in the best way possible. And the same thing with our grandchildren. They're very different how they take in information, how they are the areas of interest that they have. They're all different. So you're never going to go wrong when you are giving parents the ability to make those decisions of what is going to work best for their children.
One question, I'm going to try to get to a couple more because we got a short time here. This is a hard one. 6 years ago, I came out of political retirement. We were on the Market Street Bridge with a bunch of people in April of 2020 saying, we don't think the masks work. We don't think the vaccines are going to stop transmission. My church is closed. My gym is closed. I've been told I'm non-essential. In Tennessee, over the next 18 months, 24.4% of small businesses failed while big boxes were allowed to be open as they send their PAC contribution and lobbyists to Nashville. Governor Lee told people not to congregate to worship God. He canceled Thanksgiving according to the order, shuttered schools, sent kids home, uh, pushed the mask, pushed everything else. The National Guard didn't have any medical freedoms during the time. Contact tracing, people died alone in nursing homes. And this wasn't the Democrats. Democrats weren't in power. The Republicans were. And this General Assembly just kind of stood by and said, let's see what happens. Meanwhile, I look at this and I go, constitutionally, with the oath of office, shouldn't I be able to go to church and run my business? And do you have any authority to do this? And so and long story short is like, I can't believe our own party put us through that relatively needlessly. And GOP primary voters, Clay Travis talked about this at an event and everybody's shaking their head like, we're just afraid that like if it happened before over a bad cold, If all our rights could be ran over by a bad cold, like what in your record would point to say that you would have stood by our rights that versus what we had to go through because nobody's ever paid a price for those bad decisions except for the residents of Tennessee, and I'm just nervous that it'll happen again in my lifetime.
And what we have to do is keep that focus on individual freedom because government ought not to be able to force you to shut down your business, not go to work, not go to church. And that is what we saw happen so many times during COVID. And what we have to do is make certain that we recognize those individual rights and freedoms and realize where those freedoms come from. And that it is going to be imperative that individuals have that right to keep that business open, that they have that right to continue to educate their children, that they have that right for and that religious liberty and that exercise of their freedom and their liberty.
Well, thank you. I'm just still horrified over the whole thing, and everybody else says forget, but it's a hard thing to forget.
Well,
Um,
yeah, it is. And the thing is, and this is something that points to the importance of governors and bringing that power out of DC. And thank goodness President Donald Trump said he is draining the swamp. This power is going back to the states. And Brandon, I feel so strongly we have been such a, we're ahead of the curve on this with this authority coming back. When you think about healthcare and education and energy and all these policy areas, our goal as a state should be the state that everybody wants to emulate, the state where people say, I like what they're doing in Tennessee. We ought to be doing that. We should be America's conservative leader. We should be number one in conservative policies. We should be number one in educating our children and having those choice and options. We should be number one when it comes to generating energy that is needed for a growing economy and improving our infrastructure that is necessary for a growing economy. We should be number one when it comes to fighting illegal immigration and supporting our law enforcement. And we should absolutely be the number one state in this country when it comes to preserving and protecting individual freedoms.
Thank you so much on that. Two very quick questions. I'm going to keep it super short. Number one is we fought the legislature for like a 10 years, maybe 15 years to close the Republican primaries to Democrats. I'm an old campaign hand. I can pull up the 4-4 vote. Okay, this person never voted ever in a Republican anything, but they only vote in the Republican primaries, but they're voting in the presidential Democrats. Like if they're registered as a Democrat, they're on Facebook posting as a Democrat. There's hundreds of them every election. We've tried to get the General Assembly to close these primaries. The state executive committee has sent them. Scott Golden has gone down on bended knee and asked them and got nothing in reply. Would you be for party registration to make sure we don't have Democrats voting in Republican primaries?
I think it should be Republicans voting in Republican primaries.
Spread the word around. Tell Cameron Sexton and Randy McNally they have not gotten the notice. One last question, and then
Sure.
and two compliments. The question is, President Trump's got a really good record of breaking long-standing tradition and allowing conservative media to actually show up at government press briefings. Cameron Sexton has locked us out of the press briefings. I know because I ask questions GOP primary voters actually care about. They like Phil Williams, the Tennessee Lookout, the Tennessean. They ain't ever seen a conservative policy they liked. They lobby against them actively. But he's like, come on, boys, ask me questions because it's all going to come from the Democrats' perspective, which doesn't make a difference to him because he's in the R+18 district. But like, where would you be on like conservative media actually having access to ask questions about Tennessee state government?
And, this is one of the things I've really appreciated so much about President Trump, whether it was campaigning for him in 2016 and working with him through his first administration, working with him as he got ready to run. And then, I chaired the platform committee for President Trump so that we would have a good, solid platform and he would be able to make these promises and we could keep these promises. And as I chaired that platform and worked with him during the campaign season, it always impressed me how much he appreciated how media had changed. And when you would do something, you would have bloggers and podcasters and those that were doing streaming services, and so many people that were there because the old mainstream media is never going to fairly cover you, but it will be the podcasters and the streamers and people that are the new media, which is where most people are getting their news. They're the ones that are going to really help get that message out. And I have appreciated that. I think people are learning a lesson from what President Trump has done. And of course, new media should be allowed to come in and ask those questions because they probably have more of an audience than some of the old mainstream media.
Well, you're very kind. We get more social media traffic and action. Like we reach several million people, even though we have a small
Yeah,
following. They're just the folks that share everything. To close here, because we're over time, number one is I want to thank you for taking these questions. These are
sure.
hard questions. The questions you get asked from most of the other media sources are questions that only Democrat voters care about, which doesn't make them hard, right? It doesn't matter what you even say to them because
Yeah.
that's not who you're running for the ticket, right? Not that you're not going to represent all of Tennessee. I get that. But for the primary, which comes before the general, thank you. It shows you've got a lot of guts. It makes me respect you a lot more. And your staff has been very easy to work with, and they seem very competent and professional. And so that you don't always run into that on campaign. So, in closing, I just want to say, if you want to leave the listeners with some words, but eat your good nutrition, get plenty of sleep. This is not a lark. People don't realize how hard you work on these statewide campaigns. You've done it before. So good luck to you because you're going to need it. Rest
You.
up, and I'll let you have the last word.
Yes, it is truly an honor to serve the people of Tennessee, and I am blessed every single day by being able to talk with and work with and listen to Tennesseans. Our state is a great state. And right now, our state does not need a manager. Our state needs a leader who is focused, who is conservative, who is determined. And our state needs a leader who has a proven history of delivering for Tennesseans. That leader is me. And I am looking forward to being the 51st governor of the state of Tennessee.
Ms. Blackburn, thank you for being here, for talking to all of our folks out there at the Tennessee Conservative. I wish you the best on the campaign trail.
Be blessed. Thank you.
All right, guys, if you enjoyed this, go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com, hit the sign up button. Until next time, I'm Brandon Lewis, signing off.